This is the minor side of life. And now, Rob Sternberg.
Thank you, Pete, and we are so glad you are with us here on The Minor Side of Life. This is where we talk candidly about the business and promotional aspects of minor league sports. Each episode you'll hear from a different guest who's either worked in a minor league office or played or performs on the minor league stage. We talk about how they got started, what they've learned, and some opinions and personal stories along the way. If you've worked in minor league sports or want to know what it's like, then this is the show for you. For me, from the Texas League and the Eastern League to the PCL and now the International League, I'll bring almost a decade of minor league baseball stories and experience to the table, and very much looking forward to sharing them with you. Like was mentioned on episode number 6 last week with Brian Radel of the Philadelphia Wings, we said our goal here on the minor side is for releases on Tuesdays. So we very much look forward to chatting with you every Tuesday here on the minor side of life. If you have missed any episodes, of course, we invite you to check out minorside.com for all of the archived episodes. For the record, and we are now 7 episodes in, but who's counting? 7 episodes in, and our very first episode is still the most listened to show we've done. That was back in July. The first, it was 2 episodes that went up, the first one being with Gary Green. Gary, of course, the principal owner of the Omaha Storm Chasers and Baseball America. So that was a lot of fun to talk about things at the ownership level in minor league sports. Next Tuesday here on the minor side, we'll chat with, well, I guess he should be introduced as an NBA executive Jeff Brown. And before you say, I thought this show was about minor league sports. Before you say that, exactly like that too. So before you do it, don't do it, because Jeff, of course, worked in minor league baseball for well over a decade and was the Lakewood Blue Claws GM from their inception. He left minor league sports to bring those towns to Rutgers Athletics and give them some juice from the minor side as they moved from the Big East Conference to the Big Ten Conference. Right now, as we mentioned, he works in the NBA offices, and we'll chat with him about how this all went down and what he's up to now. We'll do that next week. Next week will be episode, well, if today's 7, next week will be episode 8. Yes. So, of course, we look forward to that. We do appreciate the feedback online as well. I would love to respond to any questions or comments that come up out of the shows, so do drop us a line. We were glad to hear from Nick Hanley of the Nick Hanley Show, afternoons on Omaha's ESPN affiliate AM 590. That was in response to episode 6. He was wanting to know about dogs taking dumps on baseball fields, but we'll have to wait until we talk to some of our friends from Northwest Arkansas for that tale. That was where that one went down. Also, before we get into it, we'd like to thank Promotional Adventures for presenting this episode of The Minor Side of Life. We are right in the thick of the planning stages of the 2020 season, and I'm sure it's not too late for the second half of hockey and basketball as well. So if you are doing promotional giveaways at your team, make sure whoever does the ordering gets in touch with Dustin at promotionaladventures.com. We'll chat about promotionaladventures.com in just a bit, as we're about to welcome on filmmaker and 10-year pro baseball veteran Anthony Seratelli. The first time I saw Anthony was actually my first year in baseball. I was in the aforementioned AA Northwest Arkansas Naturals organization, working with Doug Webb, working under Doug there. And I remember Anthony, he played all over the field for Brian Polberg's Naturals that season. He hit 282, and his on base was 392. So he was reaching base 4 out of every 10 trips to the plate, which is pretty good. I don't remember him from Media Day too much that year, or much about Media Day at all for whatever reason. But it's not too often. And I remember walking into the control room one day during the season, and there was Telly, as his teammates call him. So it's not too often that the players find themselves up in the control room, and he's working on Premiere or After Effects, video editing or motion graphics programs. I don't know which one because I didn't take too good of a look, but it seemed like he was editing away at something. And that's when Doug told me later about his footage and YouTube videos So of course we checked it out from there. So that was kind of the introduction to his production passion. On the baseball side, though, he went to high school in North Jersey. He was a walk-on at Seton Hall in the Big East, and he played 4 years there. Spent a year at Indy Ball after that with the Windy City Thunderbolts, which is just outside Chicago. And then once again, in walk-off fashion, went to the Royals via a tryout camp that they were holding in Surprise, Arizona. He made the organization, and he basically spent the next 7 years, this is from 2007 to 2013, pretty much working his way up the system, the Royals organization, from rookie ball to AAA with the Omaha Storm Chasers. And after that 7-year run, he seemingly had a clearer path to the big leagues with the New York Mets, and signed a 1-year deal that was spent in AAA Vegas with the fiery Wally Backman in the dugout. And while seemingly knocking on the big league door, the season ended before the call ever did come. And so Anthony spent his 10th and final season with the Seibu Lions in Japan. And we'll bring him on now. And since retiring, he's devoted his time to continue to develop a hobby and a passion into a career when he founded Jersey Filmmaker, a production company based in New Jersey. And Anthony, thanks so much for taking the time today. How'd I do on that? Okay.
Well, I don't think we need to talk much more. It sounds like you just gave my whole life story. I think the episode's over.
All right. Well, it was a brief one this week, folks. We thank Promotional Adventures. Pete, where are you at?
That was a great, quick overview of my career. Thank you for that.
No, sure thing. More or less, I'd just like to get everyone caught up with your background and everything. So let's get into it then. To start, right now, you're fully immersed in your production company, Jersey Filmmaker. Most of the time, I guess, both start out as hobbies between baseball and filmmaking. Were you into it so much growing up, and more so filmmaking now? When and how did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly that, a hobby while I was playing. And I can tell you exactly how. I don't think everyone knows that moment, but I have that moment. And for me, it was back in the day. My dad used to, when digital started taking over, he started digitizing all of our family photos and videos and putting them onto DVDs at the time, and he would hand them out for family occasions like Christmas or just honestly whenever he wanted to. But usually he would try to put it out on a holiday, and he'd give everyone one, and it had just memories, again, just family photos, videos he had laying around that he put from VHS and onto the computer. And I decided to one up him one year, and when I played winter ball in Columbia after the 2007 season, which was the year after I played in Idaho Falls in rookie ball with the Royals, or short season, whatever you want to call it. I went to Colombia, South America, and I was there from October. I'm pretty sure it was October 15th to January 15th. So I remember that because my sister graduated from college that December. And when I got back in early January, I was trying to figure out, or mid-January, I was trying to figure out what to get her for her graduation as a gift. And she was having a party 4 days after I got home. She had waited till I got home to have it, even though she graduated in like mid or early December. So I'm like, what am I going to get her? And for some reason, she kept telling me that the Crank That Soldier Boy song, I don't know if you recall that song, was going to be the dance at her party, right? She's going to make everyone do this dance. She's going to have grandma and grandpa do this dance. So I really don't know what sparked the idea, because it wasn't like a huge passion of any sort of mine yet. But I was like, let me figure out how to record everyone doing this dance and cut them into the music video. So I did that in within 4 days. I went around recording everyone kind of behind her back, so she didn't know about it, obviously, and getting everyone to kind of do a little portion of this dance. And I chopped them all into the music video, and I made a little intro to it. So it ended up being like this 7-minute video-ish in length. And I showed it at her party, and there were about 100 people there. And I'll never forget this moment of putting it on the screen. But instead of watching the screen, I started watching everyone's reactions, which is what you do generally as a filmmaker. Is you, even if you're in a theater, and screening something you've put together, even though you're watching it, you've seen it probably 100 times already. So you're really like, what you're watching, even though you might not be physically looking at them, is the reactions of the crowd to know what's good, what's bad, what can be fixed, especially those early screenings where you're still in post-production. So anyway, that's besides the point. But it was my first time that I sat in front of an audience with something I produced. And as low level as it was, everyone was laughing, and my sister at the end was crying, and she was so happy to have that on tape and like be able to watch that back. And we still watch it from time to time today, and to see those reactions and what kind of emotion you can get out of people by putting these things together was an immediate hook for me. And again, that was early 2008. So I signed with the Royals in 2007. And from 2008 on, no matter what team I was with, I started just studying and playing around with it. And I got into visual effects, and I'd create a sketch around a visual effect, and I'd grab some teammates and I'd make a little story, and we have this little 2 or 3 minute thing. And I mean, they're still out there. You can go search them. There's videos out there that I have. Eric Hosmer in, or Everett Tiford was one of my buddies that liked to do it a lot. Will Smith, Johnny Giavotella, we were all in them. They're all messing around. And as the time went and they saw what I could do, they all loved it and wanted to get involved. So no one ever said no to anything. So I just kept doing them.
And you say you were hooked, but still you have this other sort of dream you're pursuing and goal you're pursuing. Certainly you have to work extremely hard to get great at both. Can you talk about that dynamic and how you spent your time working on both simultaneously? And
it was an interesting combination of passions, I guess. Yes, my ultimate goal was to make it to the big leagues and play baseball. There was no way I was going to stop that to start a production company. But there were a couple things to think about as I was doing it. Yes, it was definitely very much a hobby. I mean, a lot of guys play video games. Some guys read a book. Some guys play instruments. I was making these videos on the side. So yes, it was something to just kind of occupy my downtime, something to take your mind off the game, because it's pretty much all you think and eat and breathe when you're playing. So it was a nice little break to do other things here and there. But there was that fine line of I guess the problem with it would be that I'm producing these things and putting them out there so people see them, including the organization. And when you're trying to get to the big leagues, you don't want them to think you're distracted. And that was a little bit of an issue for me, was how much can I do? How much should I not do? Again, it was just something as a hobby to take up some time away from the field. It didn't interrupt what I was doing out there. But you do have that line to walk. It's, I wasn't a high pick. I'm not a big money guy, so I can't get away with as much. And, I had to decide how much I wanted to put out there and how much I didn't want to put out there. So, I had to play with that, but otherwise it was very much a passion, a hobby for me to do, again, very much on the side of baseball. It had nothing to do with, it would never overtake baseball. I wish I could still be playing today. And if I was, then I'd be starting my production company later, so it's nothing that would have ever gotten in the way of it. It was just a little bit it was much a hobby.
So what was the line in the sand? And full disclosure, I happen to be talking about the Royals in our latest episode with Brian Radel, available at minorside.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. But I was talking to Brian about how often it comes up that the Royals player development people, and really anyone from that organization, always just seemed like the classiest people you ever met. So that said, I guess, what was some of the feedback that you got? Does that hold up? And just what were their feelings on your aspirations in film? And did they think it was just a hobby or what?
I mean, from all the feedback I've gotten, they all loved it. They would laugh at some of the things I did. And again, being that I didn't let it get in the way of my playing on the field, which I'm sure they can tell, if they saw that it was a disruption to either my game or anyone else's, I'm sure they would have put an end to it or asked me to stop. But it wasn't that at all. And they've given me nothing but compliments on that over the years. And I think they saw where that was going. And I don't think anyone's surprised that that's what I'm doing nowadays.
Well, let's talk about those years in just a sec, because we can actually back it up for the full picture here. Because before you developed a passion for filmmaking, you had, of course, a passion for baseball then. And again, full disclosure, you're actually the first player to come on the show here. So from an audience perspective, we haven't heard any sort of story like this in this space just yet. So congratulations, and thanks for taking that leap of faith with us, and really talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, prior to finding my passion for film, which is, I said, in, I guess, 2008, we can call it, I had no other passions or aspirations besides baseball, really. I wanted to play so bad. Even in high school, I got cut my freshman year. That's an interesting story too. I got cut pretty quickly. I did go to a big high school, lots of kids. I think I graduated with almost close to 1,000 in my class. I think it was in the 700 to 800 range. So I'm pushing a little high, but still 750 to 800 kids in my class. So there were a lot of baseball players, and I got cut pretty quickly. And my middle school gym teacher came to me, and he just knew of my, I guess, athleticism from being my middle school gym teacher, and he knew my passion for playing any sport. And I was going to go out for the golf team once I got cut. And he came to me and said, come back and try out as a pitcher. And he's like, I'm going to do what I can to help you get on this team. So I did that. And I didn't go to the golf tryout, and I went back as a pitcher, and I did make the team. He helped me make the team as a pitcher. I proceeded to pitch 2/3 of an inning that season. I came in my one appearance with bases loaded, gave up those 3 runs and 3 of my own. And I knew right then and there, if I didn't know before that I wasn't going to be a pitcher. And I got 3 at-bats that season. I went 1 for 3. So my freshman year in high school, I had 3 at-bats and 2/3 of an inning on the mound, and that was it. And then I came back and made the team, the JV team, my sophomore year, and started switch hitting that year. And I somehow got playing time because I don't know, different coach, different year, whatever it was, it worked. And I got on the field. I switch hit for the first season I've ever done that, and I hit like 375 or something like that. And as flourishing as it may have been, I think I hit almost 500 my senior year. I didn't get recruited to play anywhere in college. So
no schools at all?
Yeah, I don't know. In my head, there was no other option besides playing. I guess I had thought about the schools I applied to, and I knew here's another thought process that is not correct. But at the time I thought it was. And I applied to only Division I schools. And I said, if I can't play Division I baseball, I can't play professionally, which is a terrible thought process. But I didn't know anything about it. No one in my family had played past high school. I wasn't even barely in any like travel teams at the time. It wasn't as big then. It was around, but not as big as it is now. So I just didn't know. I didn't know any better. And I said, I'm going to play Division I baseball, or I'm not going to play. And I went to Seton Hall. I ended up choosing Seton Hall over a couple others like St. John's and where else did I apply? Pace University at the time. I think they actually went under for a minute as far as the baseball team, and then brought them back. But anyways, I applied to like 3 or 4 schools. Ended up choosing Seton Hall because it was close enough to be home, but also far enough to stay there. I wanted to be on campus, and they had just won the Big East the year before. So it was a good Division I baseball team in the Big East. And I walked onto that team somehow, and ended up starting by the 8th game. I think the second baseman got hurt. So I kind of fell into that role, and I played the rest of the season, and I was a captain my sophomore year. I was a 3-year captain. Some of these things I look back, I have no idea how this happened. But
what do you attribute to it now? Like looking back now, being a captain, you have to be a leader, that you have to have some charisma, talent, stuff like that. But even on field wise, what made the coaches say, damn, this guy's not going away?
I think I hope it was just my attitude on the field. I just wanted to play. And I think that showed in my, the way I went about the game, the way I was knowledgeable of the game, the way my effort on the field. I don't think it's any one thing. I think it's just overall way you carry yourself on and off the field. And that went right into the rest of my career. I mean, you mentioned, I went and I had to play indie ball first. And I think I went to 7 workouts after my college career was over, which I didn't get drafted from. I flew to different states to go to these workouts, and I ended up signing with a team in Chicago when I was at a workout for the Padres at an independent team's field. They were hosting it at this independent team, the Windy City Thunderbolts. And I ended up signing with the Windy City Thunderbolts in September 2005, which the season didn't start till, that's the end of the season if you think about it. And we didn't start playing till May, because indie ball starts later. It's kind of like short season, May 2006. So I didn't play from when my college season ended in May. I think it's May 2005 or June, however late it went. I'm not sure, but it doesn't go much later than that. Because we didn't make the College World Series or anything. So I think we're done in May 2005. I didn't play an organized game until May 2006. So I actually didn't play for a full year after college, and then still continued on to a 10-year career. So it's just wild looking back, like how this.
I can't do that anymore, right?
I don't know. You would think those people are done playing if they're taking a year off. So like, it wasn't an intentional year off. It was just the only option I had. So my mom actually lived out in California. So I went out there and stayed in some warm weather and just worked out, and I played some golf on the side. And I wasn't really into my video making yet, so that wasn't a thing. And, I went to spring training. I didn't make a team out of spring training. I went to extended spring training at 23 years old. I'm there with Salvador Perez, who's 16 years old.
So this is with the Royals now.
This is with the Royals now. So after, I'm sorry. I guess I skipped a season, but the indie ball season went by just as it could. It just went by. So let me back up to that and put this back in order. So 2006, that season goes by. That ends in September. I once again go through the workout regimen of like just going to these open tryouts come February. But that winter I had signed again to play another year with Windy City for another. I got a raise of $100 a month and make that $600 a month. I think I was making, or $700. It might have got raised to, was my big raise for my second season with an indie team.
Well, they must have liked you then to throw you a couple more bucks there. And I've got a couple of questions in regards to that. And this is exactly up our alley here on the minor side. When you say you went to these open workouts, are they invitation only, or how does that work?
They are open workouts. So grandma and grandpa can show up, literally.
Well, not to play.
Usually there's about 100 people at these things. They quickly weed them down to probably like 10 or 15. Because again, anybody can go. So a lot of people go just to say, oh, I went to a Kansas City Royals tryout. That happens a lot. So they don't know who's going to show up or who can show up, i.e. a guy like me per se. So they don't limit it to invitation only. There are private workouts, which I actually had one lined up with the Chicago White Sox. And I could tell you these exact dates because it's other dates I can easily remember. I had a private workout on March 1st with the White Sox in Arizona. I think I had another open workout on the 3rd. I forget with what team. But on February 27th, I had an open workout with the Royals, which I was kind of just going to get work out the jitters of getting in front of a couple of scouts, one-on-one, which February 27th is my birthday. So that was my 23rd birthday. And I go to the open workout and the same thing, 100 people or so. They cut it down to like 10. They go through the 10 of you more in detail. Then they kept me and one other guy who actually also signed. His last name was Thompson. I forget his first name. He was around for like a year or two. But they cut it down to 10. Then they cut it down to like 2. And I'll never remember being on that backfield. And Scott Sharp came up to me and said, we'd like you to come to spring training. And I didn't hesitate to sign the contract. They brought me right over to the clubhouse. We signed. I had to call the White Sox and say, thanks for setting up a private workout, but no thanks. The Royals beat you to it. And, which is classic with them being in the actual, like, what are the odds of the division rivals? Yeah, they got me first, but, so then I go to spring training. So now we're back where I skipped ahead to. I don't make any teams.
Do you have an agent by this time?
I do not. I did not get an agent till I think like 2011 or 12. I'd have to figure that out exactly. But I was big on another thought process that's probably not very good. But I didn't want to go asking for someone to represent me. I wanted someone that wanted to represent me because they thought I was valuable enough to them as well. So I never searched one out until one came to me, and that happened eventually, and it was great. It was a great relationship, and that wasn't until 2011, I think. So I go I go through spring training, don't make a team. I go to extended spring training, hanging out with Salvador Perez. I'm going to like the Spanish classes or the English classes because I want to learn Spanish because all these guys are speaking Spanish. So like I'm hearing the teacher teach English words to these guys in Spanish. So I'm picking up on Spanish and hanging out with them. It was actually a lot of fun. So I made the best of being in extended spring training because if you ask anybody, it's pretty much like hell. You don't want to be in extended spring training. It's in Arizona in the hottest weather. Well, I guess it could be in Florida too, but it's in the hottest weather. And seasons are moving along and you're sitting here playing exhibition games with the youngest of young players. And it's just not where you want to be. Definitely not at 23 years old. But that's where I was. And I stuck that out.
And those scenes are almost eerie too, because you have professional players playing on these back fields, like 8 of them back to back to back, like something you might see where they're like at one of these tournament venues, and they just might be playing on one field, right? And there's basically nobody around, just guys' families maybe and some coaches, and it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it is the same thing over and over again. I mean, and especially after going through a month and a half of it in the actual spring training, it's just another 2 months of it. It's not fun. It's really not that much fun. It's hard to say that looking back because I would love to be playing, but in the moment, that's a really tough thing to go through mentally when you're trying to make a full season team and trying to get to the big leagues. It's like it's almost the lowest of the low of where you could be, besides not being with a team. So you just want to get out of there, and so eventually I did because extended ended, and I went to short season with Idaho Falls, and we had a great team there, and I did well there. I did really well there, and I went on to play winter ball in Columbia, which I spoke about. I did really well there, and I skipped a level and went to high A. I did really poorly there for a season. Repeated that, did okay, moved up, did okay 2010 prior to you coming along to join that team. I did okay, had a great playoffs, and that's the best team I've ever played on. And that was a ton of fun.
That was like an all-time minor league team.
It was unbelievable. I mean, we couldn't lose. And I mean, we won almost 100 games as a minor league team, which is, I think was 96, or we were pretty close, including the playoffs. But that was so much fun. And I played okay during the season, had a great playoffs, came back and had a really nice season and got my first big league invite and all those things, and just then went to AAA, had a good season, and just kept moving along. And I just never got that call to the big leagues. And even when I left the Royals and went to the Mets, I had a really, really good chance to make that team, and I didn't play well. And I don't make any excuses for that. But it was an unknown to me at the time. Actually, it was the beginning of my shoulder issues. I didn't figure that out till mid-season when I actually went and got it checked and got an MRI and stuff, and found out that I have arthritis, which when I first was informed, I thought was the best news ever, because I thought I had torn my labrum in college and I had that repaired, and I thought it felt very similar. And this is 9 years down the road now. So I'm like, oh man, this thing is coming back. I probably tore it again or something. And when they told me I didn't have any tears and they told me I had arthritis, I'm like, all right, like, this is great. Like, what do we do? Let's just get it right. And they're like, no, this is not good, because it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And your days are limited, essentially. And so I shot it up with cortisone for the first time, and I ended up playing the last 2 months of the season with the Mets in AAA, played really well, and my shoulder felt pretty normal. And then I signed to go overseas, and uh, it just didn't get any better. I took a few months off and, tried to, again, get some cortisone or get whatever work done I could. And it just didn't get better. It just kind of kept getting worse, as they said it would. And it was just a matter of time before I could barely throw the ball across the room, but without any pain. I can't throw a ball now across the room without any pain. So people, if you were to play catch with me, you wouldn't believe that I played professional baseball, but which is unfortunate, but there's nothing I could really do about it. So I'm glad I found another passion to kind of move quickly into and almost put it behind me. I kind of separate those two parts of my life, and it was a great time while it lasted, and now I'm on to the next thing.
And along the way, though, you were able to not only get interested and become passionate about whether it was cinematography or special effects, and take it from someone that does it full time through parts of your playing career. The fact that you got as good as you did while playing at a level that brought you to the doorstep of Major League Baseball, to me, it's pretty fucking incredible. And like, even the time, did you ever look back on the videos and be like,
looking back, looking back at stuff I did yesterday, there's always like improvements to be made. It's one of those things. It's just like baseball. You never know it all, and you're always learning something, and you can always improve. So, looking back at that old stuff, I could pick them apart, but it doesn't matter. It's part of the process. Like, a lot of people are like, why do you still have them up there? As I'm trying to promote my company that's much more professional than maybe some of the stuff I did back then. But look, if you're not going to hire me because I made a video 10 years ago with my friends, and so be it. I don't want to work with you. Those are so much fun to me and such good memories. Like, they can live wherever they need to live, and I'm happy to be able to look back at them. That's more valuable to me than any job. So.
And could you talk about that? And I don't know how vividly you remember shooting and producing them, but certainly living through those moments. And we've talked about you bringing the I don't know if it was a GoPro on the road, and we'll definitely have these links up in the show notes to this video from 2013 and a collection of others too in the show notes. But talk about putting specifically that one together, shooting while you guys are making the run.
Yeah, I did a recap video of when we won the national championship in AAA. And yeah, I remember that very clearly. It was a GoPro that we shot a lot of it on. Some of it was, some of it wasn't, but we had that GoPro ready to go, whatever we were doing. So when we saw the game coming to a close, we had it ready. Like, somebody was holding it and running out onto the field with it, and we're jumping and celebrating. And we had someone go out like to the, when we do the first game and we have everyone announced, like, they came out and did all the high fives with the GoPro. I don't know how I got away with that. I didn't know. I guess it was small enough that no one could really tell that we had it out there.
No, I think we're all surprised sometimes in what we can get away with.
Yeah, when you're winning, no one really cares what you do. So that was the good news, was that we were winning. So, we brought it everywhere. We had it in the clubhouse when we're celebrating and popping the bottles of champagne, which was, again, something I can look back at now and like, it's so cool to relive the moment, which you usually can only do in your head. But now everyone can experience it a little bit, and definitely brings me back to like actually being there, which is super cool.
And that Chris Dwyer National Championship bobblehead was so cool too. Dwyer, of course, pitched in that national championship game right here in the Lehigh Valley, and carried a perfect game into the 7th inning. I remember watching the game in Northwest Arkansas, but I got to Omaha that offseason about 6 weeks before the season started, and that was when I first got in touch with Dustin Griffin at Promotional Adventures. And Dustin told me all I needed to hear at that point, really, and that was the Chris Dwyer bobblehead would be on time. The season was about 6 weeks away at that point, and it can be close, of course, especially when you open early at home. And I think we did that giveaway on April 6th or 7th, and the season opened on the 4th. So pretty quick turnaround from conception to actually having the item in hand, and error-free, just like that project was, and just like the service I came to expect from Promotional Adventures. That's why if you've got giveaway item plans for 2020, whether if you got a hockey team, a baseball team, lacrosse, college basketball, NBA, get your promotions person in touch with Dustin at promotionaladventures.com. I wouldn't go on about it every week if I didn't believe it, and I'm sure we'll get into a number of times Dustin and his team have helped me out in a pinch. They just have that capability. They've been doing this a long time and know what the teams need and have just about whatever item you could think of, custom headwear, apparel, novelties, and more. And if it's not listed on their website at promotionaladventures.com, just let them know what you're looking for. Once again, that's Dustin at promotionaladventures.com. And Anthony, what I remember really before that run picked up was how far back you guys were. And then, of course, I heard about it all the years later from Marty and Stava, Nasser, especially Pollock, who needed to organize the travel, about how far back you guys were, and then just went on this run. And I think you had a losing record, won the division, and kind of backed your way in.
Yeah, we 100% backed in the playoffs that year. That's not something to brag about, but that's what happened. And but what is to brag about is that we weren't the same team that we were in 2010, where we should have dominated. There was no way we should lose, and we didn't that year, thankfully, because that's one of those teams you look back at and like, man, we were so good but lost. Like that's always a bummer too. So we accomplished what we should have there, but we over-accomplished definitely in 2013. Not that we weren't good enough to do that, but we didn't play that consistently throughout the season. Obviously, like you said, having a losing record, making the playoffs is kind of like the Seahawks that one year. I remember they made a playoff run.
Just winning at the right time.
Yeah, but we won at the right time. We really did, and we put it together when we needed to, which, I mean, I think attests to the prior teams that were so good, because we've had so much playoff experience. I know for a fact that we made the playoffs all 7 seasons I was with the Royals, and then I also made it with the Mets in 2014. So I never missed a playoff season as a minor leaguer. We just had good teams, like whether that's luck or not, because we backed in that one year, but we did it. We got there, but we just knew how to win when we did get there, because everyone had that kind of experience for the most part. So
how do you think an organization, in your opinion in general, how do you think they look at winning at the minor league level? You always hear it's like guys want to play well enough to get to here and play well enough to get to there and move on and move on and move on. So how does an organization look at that? How do the players look at that?
I mean, if you look back at, again, our runs as that 2007 to 2014 range of a lot of playoff teams, a lot of championships, and then go look at the big league team just following that up immediately with a World Series appearance and then World Series championship. I mean, if that's not like really good stats for you to go look at, or to show that having that success at the minor league level can carry into the big leagues, I don't know what is. But I think they should look at that very heavily. And I'm sure the Royals did. I mean, they saw what was happening when Dayton Moore took over, and like all these players start bringing in all these players 2007 on. I think it was pretty clear that we had something special going. And for it to turn around that quickly once everyone kind of got there was pretty amazing. It was really cool to watch, and I thankfully was able to attend when they won here in New York. Game 5, I saw a couple games, and Game 5 was one of them, and I got to go down onto the field with them after they won, and they went down to the clubhouse, and I was down there a little bit, and it was really cool to be a part of it, even though I wasn't, especially, actually at the time I wasn't a Royal anymore. And then also, I'm going to Japan. It's like I'm completely past the Royals, but they let me come out there and celebrate a little bit with them, which was just like the coolest thing, because I played with all those guys and like pretty much to the highest level I possibly could without being in the big leagues. So for them to share that moment with me was really special to me. And I'm very thankful for that, because that's the closest I will ever come to winning a World Series, I'm sure. So that was a really neat experience. And I'm really happy for them and the organization, for them to get to do that after those years of hard work. It was really cool.
Yeah, that must have been awesome. I was going to ask you about that. And I was going to ask you about them turning the lights off. I had heard this story that the Mets office wanting to, I guess, shut the party down, turn the stadium lights off at one point. I guess rather than, just yelling the cops are coming, they turned the lights off.
Maybe I was probably already underneath and like heading out on the buses or something. So I didn't see that, but I'm sure they did.
And you were technically a Met at that point too, then.
I was technically, I was technically a Met at the time. Yeah. Because, free agency doesn't happen until 5 days after the World Series ends. So I was pretty sure I wasn't re-signing with them, but at a very technical on paper level, I was a New York Met and I was on the field celebrating that the Mets lost with the Kansas City Royals. So, yes, exactly. So that was an interesting moment. I don't think many people will be able to say that happened to them.
in arguably your hometown ballpark.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot going on there. What was your year in Vegas like with those guys? And you talk about playing in Arizona, and where did you, and I kind of wanted to get into your rooming scenarios.
Sure.
But tell me, what was Vegas like and what was Wally Backman like?
Both were awesome. Wally Backman was so much fun to play for. Fiery guy, as you know. But he'll have your back, man. So like, when he's out there arguing and doing his stuff that, whether he's just trying to entertain or not, he has your back as a player. He's not out there. He's out there fighting for you. And then he'll come into the dugout and get on your ass. Even if you were wrong, he'll still go out there and fight for you, but then you're going to hear it later. But he was great, man. He was a lot of fun to play for. Super easygoing, always having a good time, but knew when to turn it on. And then playing in Vegas itself was super hot. The stadium was awful location, awful setup. And they now have a new stadium, which I'm super happy about for them. Excuse me. So it wasn't the best setup as far as to play there. Living wise, it wasn't so bad. There were a couple apartment complexes that guys tended to live at. I went with the live in a hotel route because I thought that if I projected this positivity of I'm going to get called up at some point on myself, that I would. And I ended up not getting called up all season. So I lived out of a hotel all year, which was a pain because every time we left town, I had to pack up. Every time we came in, I had to unpack. So I pretty much lived out of a suitcase all year. Which was, you just got used to it. So it was all good. But that was, I guess my mindset was I want to get called up. So I'll just live at a hotel until that happens.
And what about in general? Like without knowing too much about that particularly, I'd guess that's more expensive. But in general, the idea of staying in a hotel versus grabbing an apartment with a couple of teammates that might be there, that might not be there, I guess, the day after you sign for it.
Well, let's talk about the cost, first of all. Believe it or not, it's not that much more expensive because if you go through the team, you're getting a better deal than you normally would. And then two is if you get an apartment complex, you're paying for that all month. When you're only paying for half the days of the month because you're only there half the time, it actually ends up being about the same. I guess you just don't have a place when you're not there, but to store your stuff? So I would just store my extra bag in the clubhouse or something. So I wasn't paying much more, if at all. It was actually a very similar price. So that was one of my considerations too when doing it. But then also, even if it was a couple extra bucks, I just kept that positive mindset. I'm going to get to the big leagues anyway, and I'll be making more money. So it'll be all good. So even if I spent a couple extra bucks, it wasn't so much that it was going to kill me in any way. So that was interesting on that side of it when trying to figure that out.
So that thought process there certainly comes with experience.
Yeah, I would never have done that in the seasons leading up to it. And being new to the team, being new to the Mets was a little bit, I had 6-7 year relationships with guys I played with the Royals. So when we're looking to go somewhere and we have a pretty good idea that we're going back to Omaha or something, it was easy to set up an apartment situation and have a roommate, and it's, you've lived with them before. It's just it became very simple. Whereas with a brand new team, everyone's either bunking up with somebody already, or I just don't know anyone. It's like, I don't want to even bother. I'm just trying to play and get out of here. And it was just like, I just wanted to be by myself in a hotel, in and out. Let me get to the ballpark, do my thing, and try to get out of here. But it ended up being the whole season. So It was a little different going in because I really didn't know as many people. And it's weird because I bet you if I went to any other team, I would have known more guys than I did with the Mets. For some reason, somehow, I had barely played. Well, one, we never played against the Mets, I think, at any level. And then two, there just weren't guys on the team that I knew. Like, guys get traded, guys move around, and it's like you're going to run into guys you've played against or with somewhere. And with the Mets, it just seemed like there weren't any. It was barely any. Seriously, it was just the weirdest thing.
Where their actual affiliates didn't really match up then, I guess. Your rookie league was in the Pioneer League. Theirs is, I guess, the Appy League was the equivalent. Their high A is St. Lucie versus Wilmington and Carolina. And they're not in a Texas League, so your best shot would have been the PCL in those years in Vegas.
Yeah, and my years, they were in Vegas. And even so, I think you only play against them every other year. Or no, you go 1 year you go to them, 1 year they come to you. So yeah, I think I did play against them both years, but I mean that you play 3 games or something like that. It's once a year. So it's not the teams you're seeing consistently that you like start to like make friends on, just from batting practice, you see them around and stuff. It was just such a quick passing that didn't even remember.
Sure. And I'm glad, you're kind of here to talk about some of that because travel's a big thing that people sort of outside the bubble just sort of are incredulous about. And just in terms of coming and going, kind of living away from the ballpark in limbo with signing on for a lease in this place, but your bags are over here and sometimes your car's being shipped around, a lot of moving parts. I mean, this year, I think more than ever, I saw pictures of guys moving into a kitchen with a bed and some sheets. Not that you did that, but can you sort of talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, it completely depends what level you're at. At a lot of the lower levels, there are host families, which is always nice. Saves you money and you get to know a family and you keep those relationships. It's always a fun, I enjoyed that when there were host families available. And, but those are definitely at the lower levels. As you get higher, you start getting apartments with guys, or getting your own place or living out of a hotel. And, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when you get called up, you get what's called 7-7. And it's an amount of money it's like 7 days of I guess like a per diem for food and travel and also for accommodations. So you pretty much have a 7-day window of, get yourself a hotel or whatever to get yourself situated in an apartment or any living situation that you're going to be in. So they give you money to kind of like buffer that because you also have to get rid of your place. If let's say you have a lease in Vegas and you get called up to New York, you have to get rid of your place in Vegas. So that becomes a little bit of a pain while you're trying to play to manage all that. But what also happens is they'll a lot of times say, hey, you're getting called up, so-and-so is getting sent down. You can live in his place, he can live in yours if you guys want, and it usually happens because it's like an easy setup. Unless a guy like really has a place in he got a condo or something and it's like he's going to hold on to it anyways, and if he comes back he'll live there. But like if guys are just like renting an apartment for the season, a lot of times you just kind of swap out to make things easy. It's weird when it's like this guy that's in the same, like if I'm going up to play, I don't know, if I was going up to play third and the third baseman's getting sent down, it's a little weird, but usually you know everyone at that point, and it's like it's an odd dynamic. You would think guys playing the same position as you might not like, or, you're trying to battle for that same spot in the big leagues. But honestly, some of my best friends are guys that played the same position because you're working out together all the time because you're turning double plays together or you're taking ground balls together, or usually the infielders hit together while the outfielders hit together. So it's like you're with them all the time. So I ended up like me and Johnny Giovitella, for example, were longtime roommates, and I could have easily played second base any day of the week, and he's trying to play second base, but it's like we never felt like we were competing with each other. It's weird.
And I guess you've said you're far removed from the game to talk about CBAs and stuff to know about any of that currently, but a lot of this sort of side of it all is definitely tough and not comparable to other jobs, let's say.
I've never really, even while I was playing, thought too hard about what you're getting paid or whatnot. It's like, what you're signing up for. and you're trying to get to the big leagues. Yeah, maybe it probably isn't fair what minor leaguers might get paid, and but it's a high risk, high reward type business. So again, I knew what I was signing up for, so I never really, I don't know, I never really got into it. Just let it happen. I'm not a political guy, so if you want to call that politics, I just let other people worry about it. I just wanted to go out there and play.
And I am curious at all when the upcoming CBA negotiations do come up, if any of this sort of area is mentioned on the minor league side. But in total, I guess you complete your season in Vegas. You celebrate with the Royals, of course, their World Series on the field at Citi Field. And for the second year in a row, since you started with the Royals 8 or so years earlier, you're once again a free agent, and this time you wind up signing on to play in Japan.
Japan was interesting, to say the least. I mean, you're literally on the other side of the world, far removed from anything. Even family and friends, when it's nighttime here, it's daytime there. So like if I wanted to talk to somebody, it's pretty hard to do because they were sleeping. And then when I'm going to sleep, they're waking up. Or when I'm playing, they're waking up, and then I get to talk to them for a minute before I want to go to sleep. So as far as like on a personal level, it's different to manage like your friendships and relationships, if you have any, or family, just keeping in touch. You're just you're in a different world, so that part was interesting to kind of deal with. But on the other side of things, on the baseball side of things, they do things a lot differently. If you've ever seen Mr. Baseball,
sure.
It's spot on. I couldn't believe it. Like after I played there and watching it again, just there's so many things that are so funny to me because they're so true. It's from the stretching to the like shoes off in the clubhouse. Like everything is so true.
Did you watch it long before you went there, or
long before?
Okay,
long.
Okay.
I didn't even remember it. Like that's how long before. And then I watched it again afterwards. I was just cracking up at a lot of the things because they just rang so true. But I would say the biggest difference is they do multiple things very differently as far as approach to the game. There's a lot more quantity over quality, I would say. Not that they're not focused on quality, but they do as opposed to like as you go up in levels in America, it's do less, just do it right.
You're talking in terms of reps and stuff like that?
Yes, mostly reps. And yeah. So whether it's batting practice or ground balls or infield, outfield, like I said, in America, we try to preserve our arms and our time on the field because we do so much of it anyways. So as you get older or like further along as far as levels, they calm you down with that stuff. It's like, okay, let's take 5 reps and do them right as opposed to taking 20 just to do 20. But it's not like that over there. They count, and it's like, let's just do this many in this much time. And the young guys, it's even worse. Like they keep going and going and going. However, I would say they're very, very good with foreign players and knowing that, and they give you the option to not do as much per se if you didn't want to. But it feels really weird when everyone's doing a lot and you just say, no, okay, I'm good. I'm just going to sit on the side. Like I just couldn't do that. So I would just try to keep up with them, and that didn't help my arm at the time, which was in bad shape. So, but that's just their way. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. They just do it differently. So as a foreign player, it's hard to keep up with. Especially again, if you're going over there to play at that level, you've probably played at a higher level in America. So you've gotten to a point in your life where you have figured out how to manage the quantity by, doing more quality reps. And then you gotta kind of switch that and, or just go against their way, which to me, again, felt weird. So there's that. There is, they pitch differently, very differently. They aren't scared to stay up in the zone. And, in America, you're trying to blow a fastball by a guy here and there up in the zone, but generally they're trying to stay down in the zone. And, I've played for 10, 15, whatever years growing up looking for the ball down. And they figured out that I wasn't as good at hitting the ball up. So they stayed up there, and it was hard to adjust to, and I didn't have enough time really to do so either. I didn't get enough time on the field with being healthy to really make that adjustment. So,
and then you're having a frustrating time on the field then, but even so, life off the field and even communicating with your teammates.
Yeah. No, none of them spoke English at all for the most part. You have a full-time translator, especially on the field. And if I needed him off the field, he would accompany me.
Was it the same guy from that had Jack Elliott in Mr. Baseball, or somebody else?
Well, funny, his name is Yoshi, which I thought was classic. Like, I just love that his name is Yoshi. But he's great, dude. He's a younger guy. He's just, literally just hung around to help me figure out what they were saying and help me communicate with them, because we'd be doing drills and like trying to figure out first and third situations and stuff. And I'm playing short, and it's like, well, what are you saying? What number means what? So we had to, what play is this? What play is that? So we had to have some sort of communication. And it was it's not fast. It's not a fast process to like relay things like that when you're in the middle of the infield trying to like control the game and control it in their language. That was really difficult. So there's a lot, and I completely understand. I would think I would love to pull this number and what the success rate for foreign players is over there. How many of them stay for a second year? I would be willing to bet less than 50% play a second year. And I would say most of the time it's because it's just so difficult overall, whether it's on the field or off the field type stuff, whether you can't handle it personally, which I think a lot of people can't, because again, you're so far removed from everything, or you just can't figure it out on the field because it's so different and the language barrier. Then you have the aspect of actually performing. So I feel like there's three major components, and if you can't conquer two of them, you're really going to struggle. And I think most guys do,
And off the top of my head, I guess it's strictly the power guys, the sort of three true outcome players, homers, walks, strikeouts. Those guys are the ones that have the sustained success over there, maybe because they're not hitting and running and bunting guys over. And so that part of it is simplified a little more.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like they might have just like one goal in mind when they get to the plate, and that's all they really have to worry about. I was playing multiple positions and, trying to steal bases. That was an interesting thing too, is I was brought over there because they had some power hitters and they didn't need home runs out of me. So I was there to go at the top of the lineup to get on base for these guys and get into scoring position and stuff. And I'll never forget, I got up to the big leagues and I got on base and I stole second base and the ball was fouled off. And I got back to first base, and the first base coach, even again, he didn't speak much English, but he just gave me kind of the signal, like, stay here, stay here. So the inning ends and I run into the dugout to get my stuff or whatever it was. I ended up in the dugout. I think maybe there was a ground ball. I got thrown out at second base. So I'm running into the dugout and my translator's like on the top step as I'm coming in. And I'm like, why is he ready to talk to me so quickly? And he's like, hey, did you get the steal sign on that pitch that I went on? And I was like, no, absolutely not. And he goes, oh, okay, then you can't steal. I'm like, what? Like my mind was blown. And I was like, what do you mean?
So there's no like green light.
I was like, that's exactly what I said. I was like, you tell me I don't have a green light? And he's like, no. And what blew my mind about that was that they brought me there to steal bases. Like, I'm not a guy that's going to steal on command. I'm not Gerard Dyson. I'm not Terrence Gore. I'm fast, but I'm not that fast. I steal bases because I know when I can make it, but based on what the pitcher's time to the plate is and who's catching. So like, I'm going to steal you a high success rate, probably a few bases less than those guys, but I'm going to be pretty successful. So I'll go when I know I can make it. And that wasn't the way it was. They wanted me to go when they told me. And I was like, man, you're in for a little bit of a rude awakening, because I'm probably going to get thrown out a majority of the time you tell me to steal, because it's just not stealing a base to me, unless you're crazy fast, is like, you have to be confident that you're going to make it. And with, again, it's just all those things combined is when I know I can make it. Like I think my last season with Omaha was 24 for 25. And the one time I got thrown out was because I got a hit and run. Well, I misread. I'm sorry. I'm going to clear that up. I misread the hit and run sign. So the guy at the plate didn't swing, and I got thrown out by like a mile. I was like, dude, what happened? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, was there no hit and run on? And I had to talk to Jersh, and he's like, I didn't put it on. It's like, oh man, I misread the sign. So I screwed up my perfect season. But my point is, like, 35-5, I think, in AA one year, 24-1, I know how to successfully steal bases, but these guys thought I was just going to go over there and steal on command, and it's just not how it works. So again, it's just another mindset that's like nobody has the green light there. They control the game from the dugout. They're like, they don't let the players do what you do here as much, which is weird. So there's a lot of differences in the mental approach to the game that just aren't the same here. Again, not that they're wrong or anything. It's just you grow, you play so many years here, and then you go over there and you don't, I'm not saying you expect it to be exactly the same, but you expect to play the same game, but it's not quite the same. It's a little bit different. So that takes some adjustment.
So was there interest in another year, or we'll just see the doctor first? Or
well, for me, they didn't want to re-sign me. I think I got like 60 plate appearances in the big leagues and like 160 in the minor leagues. I was hurt the majority of the time. So my arm just was not holding up. It wasn't working. It just hurt like hell. So they didn't want to re-sign me just based on my arm. I wouldn't even say on my play, just physically I couldn't throw, and it's like they couldn't put me in certain places, and I wasn't hitting up to my normal standards. So I would have loved to have played. I actually came back home and I signed with the Diamondbacks, which most people don't know about. I signed with the Diamondbacks in like November of 2015. And
it is on your Wikipedia.
It is. Yeah. I think if you look up my if I still have a minor league page, I think I'm listed as a Reno Ace or something like that. I've never stepped foot on a field as a Diamondback or even like shook anyone's hand saying welcome to the organization. I signed some papers to go to spring training, minor league camp, not even big league camp. And my last 2 or 3 seasons here was big league camp. Then I went over there. So like came back to a minor league deal, and that was in November, and I just took a break for my arm. And in early January, it was like, all right, here we go. Let's start throwing again. And it did not feel good. Felt worse. Again, just as the doctors predicted, just kept getting worse. And I had a long talk with my agent, and he was, as he should have been, willing me to play, like give it a shot. And I was just like, I can't go there. They wanted me to play third base. I can't go there and I'd be embarrassed. Like I can't throw the ball across the diamond. There's no way I'm making a team. Like I don't want to do that to myself. I don't want to go through the pain of it physically. And I don't want to show up and get cut as like my last. I was like, it's just not going to happen. I just know for a fact it wasn't going to happen. I was very confident with that decision. It was just like, this is it.
So it was sort of like, when but a lot of people don't get to go out on their own terms, even like that. And you did.
The whole season prior to it was that struggle. And I wasn't going to go to spring training for 2 weeks for them to tell me, dude, you can't throw. I'm like, I know I can't throw. So I'm not going to embarrass anybody, me or you, so I just didn't go. A lot of people say I would never want to go out on an injury. I want to play till the jersey's torn off my back. And I am not at all upset with the way it went. I feel, besides being hurt my last season, which was, a little bit of a mental struggle and physical struggle being out there, I still was, I guess, technically at my highest level, right? I played in the big leagues in Japan. I never played in the big leagues here. So it's always gone up as far as my progression. I ended on a season overseas that I got to play in the big leagues there. I got paid the most I ever got paid. And looking back, for me, I don't see a decline in my head. I always feel like I was at the top of my game, even though again, I had some physical issues at the end. I was at the highest level I've ever played at. I never went downhill. I never was told I can't compete at that level anymore. I don't have that diminishing feeling in my head. I just look back and be like, man, I just kept getting better. And I feel like I would have been able to continue playing if my arm didn't crap out on me. So I don't have a bad memory of my playing days. Like I don't have that end of my career like, man, I just couldn't do it anymore. I sucked. I don't have that thought. It's just like whatever you want to call it, like naturally my arm, God, whatever your reasonings are, like for me, I just physically couldn't do anymore, and it was nothing I could do about it. So I'm good with that. Like, so yeah, I got to call it quits on my own terms, and I was happy with that. And thankfully, like all the other filmmaking stuff we talked about, I found this other passion that I was an easy transition right into it. So I had no down period of like being sad about not playing anymore. I couldn't be like happier or more thankful about how that went down, because it wasn't detrimental to my mind or anything. A lot of guys get stuck in baseball and don't know what to do, and they end up coaching or scouting. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but they just don't know what else to do. So they stay there and don't have really another passion to follow. And I'm just happy I found something else, because I feel like I had a good long run at baseball from when I was 5 to 32 or whatever it was. And that's a long amount of time. And now I could spend that kind of time on a new thing, and we'll see what happens. It's the same thing for me in filmmaking. I can get behind the camera. I can edit stuff. I can produce and direct, similar to how I was in the baseball field, where I played all positions. I switch hit. I ran. Like I'm just my mind and the kind of person I am is I like variety. And, I don't mind going from that career to this career, and who knows if there's another one down the line, but I like mixing it up. So I'm happy with the way everything's went.
And the comparisons of being the sort of super utility player on the field to the same deal in film and production industry is wild. The versatility comparison certainly, I guess, just speaks for itself. And I still find it unreal that this passion and skills were developing as you were reaching higher and higher levels of baseball. But talk about the transition a bit. Was it just okay over one day and on to the next project we're working on the next? Because I know you'd worked with Fanatics too, which of course used to be Majestic. So you still had some baseball still in your life.
Yeah. That was cool to work with Fanatics to keep sports, in play. You know what I mean? Like I still got to work with other athletes, and I'm still doing that. So that's really cool. I make it sound like it was super easy transition, and it was, in the sense that like once I kind of turned the switch off with baseball, it's like, okay, let me do this filmmaking thing. That happened easily, but like physically getting the work and starting the company and like trying to make that all happen and get to a point where it's like I have a career that's like actually paying a salary was not like overnight. My first year was not profitable by any means, especially after buying the equipment I needed and trying to get jobs. I barely got any. And I wasn't charging what I can now. So like there was the first year was actually I would say was mentally difficult, because I went from making the most I've ever made in my life to making I can't say the least I've ever made in my life, because some of the minor league years were pretty low in pay, but definitely a huge setback from like where I got to. And it's like, man, I'm starting all over. So that was a little bit of a mental struggle, and like a physical, a struggle to actually get work. But thankfully I again finished my career with my highest paying gig per se. So I had some money to keep me afloat and to invest in my company and get the equipment I need and take the time to go try to get the jobs. And so that worked out in my favor, that I made the money towards the end of my career, and I didn't like sign a huge bonus early and never got anywhere and spent all that money. You know what I mean? That could have went that way. It worked. It worked just fine. And, again, the first year was definitely like exhausting all my contacts and trying to get work and building my craft. Like, I still, looking back at that, which was only 4 years ago now, it's like, man, what huge leaps I've made. So I can't imagine what another 4 years is going to do.
And just in terms of gear, because I know we'll have some people interested in that, you have a ton more stuff now, I'm sure, but what do you start with? What was
at that point? I guess the main thing was just getting a camera that I thought was of a quality that I wanted, that gave me enough versatility to shoot different things, because it's not always, you're not always using the same camera. Cameras are very job specific in my mind. Like certain cameras do better with certain things. And I wanted one that could do the most jobs possible, so that I didn't have to always, again, buy all this different stuff. And I still have that camera today. I actually just bought a second one recently. So, which is a really weird thing, because you would think, 4 years in this world with technological advances, there's always something topping what came out yesterday. But there's this one camera, if anyone's interested, it's a Sony FS7 that, just in my opinion, dollar for dollar, is still the most valuable camera out there right now, and has been for like 4 or 5 years. Not that there's not other great cameras out there, but again, kind of pound for pound type analysis for its versatility and the amount of jobs it can handle. It's been the best camera I can find. So I just got a second one of those. So now I have like 9 cameras now, but those are the 2 that we use the most.
So a lot of cameras and a lot of gloves. How about that?
Yeah, it's actually, you know what? That would be a great Instagram post. Maybe one day I'll do that. Put all the cameras and gloves together and see what I have more of. That's funny.
All right. Well, Anthony, we definitely appreciate the time today. We'll of course look for all the work that you do. I know you said you just got done working on another shoot at the Orange County racetrack, a dirt or clay track. We saw some of that footage. It looks great. So thanks again.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you having me.
Anthony Seratelli on The Minor Side of Life. If you check out some of Anthony's work, and honestly, it all does look great. For more, head over to jerseyfilmmaker.com. Also in the show notes for this episode, inside of your podcast player, and certainly at minorside.com, we'll have links to some of those YouTube videos we referenced in this episode, and certainly like the 2013 Storm Chasers video. I'll get some other stuff up in there too, especially the old, what he called a professional nonsense series. And those were shot with some of the former teammates that featured certain special effects. And as we said at the open, we are currently in El Paso for the MiLB Innovator Summit. So stay in touch on Twitter at The Minor Side. And next week, we'll look forward to chatting with a longtime minor league baseball veteran and an innovator in his own right, Jeff Brown. Jeff spent over 15 years in minor league sports. He was the first GM for the Lakewood Blue Claws, and then joined Rutgers Athletics as an associate AD during their move to the Big Ten. Right now, he's with the NBA, and he's putting his experience on the minor side to good use over there. So we'll find out all about it next time on The Minor Side. Other than that, if you liked what you heard here today, please tell us. Let us know. We look forward to interacting. The show is on social media at The Minor Side on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. For me, I am at Rob Sternberg on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening. We had a lot of fun today. For the details, here's the great Pete Candianis. He's a real nice guy.
This has been a presentation of The Minor Side of Life. We kindly ask for your support of this program by subscribing to the show on your preferred podcast player, joining the newsletter list at minorside.com, and following The Minor Side on social media. Plus, you can always visit theminorside.com for exclusive content and more. Thank you for listening.